Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Numerics with Nadia. In today's lesson, we're going to change gears from all the conversions we've been doing recently and start off the basics of geometry. So in today's lesson, we're going to classify 2D shapes. First step in our lesson plan for today, we're going to define 2D shapes. And then once we do that, we're going to learn how to classify these shapes, classifying them with names by their sides, their angles, and their vertices as well. So first off, I know I'm using an abbreviation. What does 2D mean? So 2D, that stands for two-dimensional. And something that is two-dimensional, the definition would be a flat object with two dimensions. So for example, height and length, right? Or another example could be length and width. Flat just means that it doesn't have three dimensions, right? You can't hold it, it doesn't have any type of width. So that would be the definition of a two-dimensional object. And a two-dimensional shape, oftentimes, we refer to it as a polygon. So that's what we're going to be referring to it as moving forward. And a polygon, well, a polygon has a few more special rules. In order for a two-dimensional shape to be classified as a polygon, it needs to be a closed figure made up of straight lines, and it needs to have at least a minimum of 3 sides. So what we're going to do next is we're going to differentiate what could be a two-dimensional shape, but what might not necessarily qualify as a polygon. So that's going to be our next exercise. Then we'll get into classifying and naming the different types of polygons that we're really going to want to become familiar with moving forward. But for now, we really need to understand what is a polygon and what isn't a polygon. So let's start there. The directions for our practice section say to determine whether the shapes below are polygons. For number 1, we have a circle, right? And a circle, well, that's round. So that is not made up of straight lines, so it would not be considered a polygon. Our second figure here, well, this one, it's not flat, right? It has 3 dimensions, and because of that, it would also not be considered a polygon. So number 1 and number 2 are examples of where it would not be considered a polygon. Now we'll move on to our third example. Number 3, that one just has a very irregular shape, right? It's not one of the regular shapes we're used to. So this one would also not be considered a polygon because of the irregular shape. And for our last one here, for number 4, well, this one, it looks good. It's two-dimensional. It's connected all using straight lines. This shape is a rectangle, right? So number 4, that one is an example of a polygon. So 1, 2, and 3 are examples of not being polygons. This is not what they look like, but number 4 is. So now that we have a visual of what polygons look like versus what they don't look like visually, now we can begin classifying the polygons. So for this section, I'm going to color code all these shapes and write a few different differentiating factors for each of them so we can look at all of them as a whole. So our first shape in purple, this is a triangle, right? And a triangle, well, a triangle has 3 sides. I've labeled each side with a little tick mark. A triangle also has 3 vertices. So a vertice, I'll go ahead and write the little definition on the side here. All vertice means is the number of corners in a shape, right? A corner is where 2 sides meet. So we're labeling the amount of sides and the amount of corners or vertices. Our next shape here in yellow, well, that is called a pentagon. And a pentagon has 5 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it also has 5 vertices. I'll label all the corners, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've gone through a shape with 3 sides, a shape with 5 sides. Our next shape here, we're getting progressively a little bigger. This shape has 6 sides, and a shape with 6 sides, that is what we call a hexagon. And if we count up all the sides just one more time visually, we see that there is 6, and it also has 6 vertices. So 3 sides, 5 sides, 6 sides. We're gonna move on to our biggest shape that I'm going to draw out for us. There are shapes with more sides than this, but bear with me here, I'm not an artist, right? Our last shape is what we call an octagon. So if I count up all the sides here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides. Octagon, kind of like octopus, right? 8 sides. And it also has, if we count up all the corners, all the vertices, it also has 8 vertices. So notice here how all of the sides and all of the vertices, they match up. The 2 other bigger shapes that you might run into, one would be called a nonagon. A nonagon has 9 sides and 9 vertices. You can look up pictures of them online. And we also have something called a decagon. Decagon would have 10 sides and 10 vertices. So those are all the shapes that you might want to make yourself familiar with. Feel free to write all of those down in your notes. Now we're going to get a little bit more in depth into a different type of shape. So what about shapes with 4 sides? So we kind of skipped over the 4 sides. We did 3, we did 5, we did 6, 8, 9, 10. For 7, by the way, it's just called a heptagon, 7 sides, 7 vertices. But what about shapes with 4 sides? Well, that would be something called a quadrilateral. It is a whole section in and of itself, so we're gonna take and do it separately here. So we have squares. A square is a type of quadrilateral. Notice how all the sides are the same length. Another type of quadrilateral would be a rectangle, right? So we've got the rectangle drawn in green. Our next shape, we're drawing it out in yellow. This would be called a rhombus. And we have a few more. Our next shape, we're gonna draw down here in purple. This shape is called a kite. It kind of looks like one as well, right? So we have a kite as a type of quadrilateral. We have 2 more. This one drawn in red. This is what we call a parallelogram. And our last quadrilateral here is going to be drawn in this blue shade. This is what we would call a trapezoid. Now, we're going to do a whole video next week on the properties of all these different types of quadrilaterals, but for now, I've just introduced them to you, what they look like visually, and I want us to take note of that, so for our next video, we will be all set to review the different types of properties. All right, you guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope it really made sense to you what a 2-dimensional shape is, what a polygon is, and the different types of shapes we went over. We're going to do a full video on the properties of quadrilaterals next time, so I hope to see you guys then. Thank you so much for watching again. Feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment any questions or any other types of videos you'd like to see down below. Feel free to share this video with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next time.